Welcome back to the Smarter Marketer podcast, brought to you by Rocket Agency. I'm your host, James Lawrence. I'm very excited for today's pod. With me, I have Dean Mannix, who is going to downplay all of this stuff, but Dean's the #1 international best-selling author of Protect and Provide, 20 years of global consulting on sales strategy, training, and coaching across North America, ANZ, Europe, South Africa. Clients like Deutsche Bank, Oracle, Goldman Sachs. Look at him smiling, he's blushing. He is also the CEO, the CEO and co-founder of Sales ITV, which is one of Australia's leading sales organisations where you've coached and trained senior execs, corporations like Suncorp, Westpac, Macquarie Bank, Fairfax, News Corp, Meridian Energy, Medibank. It goes on and on. Mate, welcome to the pod.
Great to be here.
Dean, it's 2022, and from what you're seeing on the other side of the fence, are sales and marketing working better together now than they have historically?
I think that the challenges may have changed, but the lack of real collaboration and real understanding of the value each brings to the equation is still pretty poor.
Yeah. Considering
that organisations need to rally around sales because revenue and profit is what enables a business to survive and to buy the tech stack that everybody wants and to buy the people they want. And so it surprises me that the alignment isn't stronger.
Yeah. What would you say? Like, why does it actually matter? I think it seems like a really obvious question to ask, but why does it matter if I'm a marketer sitting in-house in an organization and don't really have a great relationship with sales or vice versa? Like, why does it matter for the two teams to
it's always mattered, right? It's always mattered. The bottom line is a great salesperson without a lead to talk to is like a 747 sitting on the tarmac, not earning you any money and costing you lots of money.
Yeah. At
the same time, a fantastic marketing campaign with zero conversion is worthless. And in fact, it's worse than worthless. It costs you money. Yeah. So the simple reality is that every aspect of the pipeline is important and therefore collaboration is important. Now, what we've got happening now, obviously, is this real blurring of the lines in terms of, well, who's responsible for which part of the pipe and can organisations operate without salespeople and just real smart marketers who nurture incredibly effectively and convert online and maybe lower level salespeople? Or what I'm really seeing is we're still in a place where most organisations are perfect marketing, nurturing, doing everything through the pipeline through marketing alone is still a pipe dream. I'm not saying there's not great marketers, but it's still a pipe dream.
Yeah, totally. I think that's right. Like some industries have been more impacted than others, but fundamentally you do kind of, most businesses do need to have both working together. And I guess my perspective on that is that the internet, the ability for our collective end customer to go out there and research and read reviews and read brand generated content and case studies and whatever else, it almost magnifies the importance of the two teams working together. I think back in the day, it was the classic old story of walking into a car sales showroom 20 years ago. The sales rep had all the power. When these days, the end customer sits there doing their own research. They do probably come into an organization better armed than they once did. So
Absolutely.
They're more swayed by marketing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no role for sales to kind of close out the revenue touch point.
Well, I mean, the fact that so car dealerships are a classic. The fact that people still have to go into the dealership to buy a vehicle because they want to touch it, they want to feel it, they want to test drive it, is an indication of the fact that we've still got department stores. Okay, yeah, sure, absolutely. Online sales going through the roof, Amazon taking over the world. But the simple reality is there are still a very significant number of people that want to touch and feel and can be turned off or turned on as a result of great sales and great sales experience.
100%. I think that from our side of the fence, Google did some awesome research kind of 2-3 years back now, looking at the average path to purchase in auto. It was kind of 900 digital touch points before they'd actually go into the dealership. But you're not seeing cars bought online, right? I guess Tesla kind of is an example of, but I imagine that 99% of vehicles being bought in Australia are being sold by a sales rep, right?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things, right? It's always easy to pull out that case study that somebody throws up so they can sell you something out of their tech stack that promises the world. Yeah. But the reality is most of these huge wins are exceptions and outliers. They are nowhere near the norm.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be very, very careful about what you make big strategic decisions and big strategic statements around. Yeah. Because the simple reality is so much of what marketers and salespeople are getting fed is simply not true.
Yeah.
It's just not true. when you look behind the numbers that these companies are claiming and reporting and the marketing that's going on at the moment, none of those numbers stack up if they were peer reviewed. Interesting, Dean. We'll have that one off the pod, so not mentioning Dean. I think it'd be interesting to, like, you're a really seasoned expert in sales environments, right? You've worked with B2C, B2B, lots of businesses in Australia, lots of businesses abroad. Like, what are the typical reasons or factors you see or have seen as to why sales teams and marketing teams just don't seem to see eye to eye? It does my head in, but even when I talk to really senior executives and very, very smart people from both sides of the table, there's a real lack of understanding of how each party can generate real value in each piece of the pipe. And what I mean by that is, I think so many salespeople completely lack any understanding of the concept of priming, the concept of getting someone ready to buy, the amount of the value that can be generated by really working on someone before they speak to the salesperson. So many of them totally discount that, and they think that they're the center of the universe and the whole sale starts with them. And that's just pure ignorance and missing out on a huge opportunity to participate with the marketing team in playing in that awareness and interest piece of the puzzle, and really sharing valuable knowledge around what's going to happen as they come through the pipe. The other side of that is I think marketing really underestimates, just because I generated an MQL, how challenging it is to convert an MQL into an SQL and then actually into action, decisions, and paying over the money. And it's really interesting. I think the industry with that MQL, SQL language has done itself a lot of damage, because it's sort of parted responsibilities and created more of a chasm between sales and marketing, when what it should have been doing was saying, actually, we need to work together the whole way through the pipe because we can both have major wins here. Yeah, I think I'd like to dig deeper into that later on, the MQL, SQL kind of divide. I did do a little bit of research coming into the pod today, Dean. I didn't want to come totally unarmed against you because I know, you generally have most of your bases covered. I was kind of reading. I'm just an angry old man, mate. Yeah. As soon as I got over 50, each and every year I've gotten angry. It's quite scary. I'm getting there. Don't worry. There's a good study which said that when marketing teams were kind of surveyed about how they felt about sales, and when sales teams were surveyed on how they feel about marketing, the terms used to describe the other was 87% negative, which I think is an interesting kind of overview. And then there was a Harvard Business Review piece that looked at what the benefits were in organizations that could actually move closer towards sales and marketing alignment. And just so clearly benefits that benefit whether you're working in a sales environment or working in a marketing team. Essentially, the time it takes to close a deal radically reduced, increased profit on the deals themselves, a flywheel effect like we would all expect, which is the quicker sales are closing, the more profit on them, the more money that then goes back into the marketing team to fund activity for the next planning cycle. Actually bigger average sales and lower CPAs. So the benefits are there, right? Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not like it's not an issue. Well, this is the fascinating thing: is people we know this, but we don't apply this and we don't discuss this enough. I think inside organisations, that so much of the client's decision / customer's decision about how much they're willing to pay, therefore how much margin you're going to generate, and when they want the product, therefore what the deal velocity is going to be, and whether they want to tell their friends about their experience and therefore whether the advocacy is going to happen. So much of that is generated very early in the pipeline. If we go to the extremes, Rolex spends a lot of money making you want to spend over $10,000 to buy their watch when you get the courage up to walk into their store, which has been designed to intimidate you around price, but make you feel special. Yeah. And there are some very brilliant marketing people playing an amazing psych ops game before anybody turns up to that store, let alone walks through the front door. Yeah. And what sales often don't appreciate is that so much of what's making it easier for them to sell more product, sell more of it, and sell it at more margin is actually determined and driven by what the customer experience is before they've even spoken.
I think that's really interesting, because I think, coming back to your point before about has the whole concept around MQL, SQL actually done more harm than good in terms of bringing the two teams together? I think that it's an interesting benefit, right? Like, I think we all think about the role of marketing just to bring leads, right, and make them reasonably well qualified. I think we think less about the work of marketers and kind of our side of the divide in terms of actually portraying a message and storytelling and all the stuff that we do to not only bring leads in, but to have them primed to spend real cash, right?
Yes. Hey, look, prime to spend, prime to want to spend, prime to expect to spend, and they're three different things, right?
Yeah.
But the MQL SQL thing, the reason I think it's been so damaging is that terminology was more about covering your ass than it was about actually generating real value inside the pipeline for both marketing and sales. And I think it's worthwhile, me pointing out something right here. I'm a sales guy. I'm an absolute sales guy. But if I was building a new business, my head of marketing would be the head of marketing and sales would report into marketing. Because whilst I believe in the whole marketing concept, the simple reality is that if you don't get the front end right, and the front end isn't supporting the back end of the pipeline, as in, conversion, you're never going to be as successful as you could be or should be.
Is that a big time expose you've just revealed on the pod? Sales leader, sales coach, sales guru, Dean Mannix says that
is a wannabe marketer.
Should be managed by the head of marketing.
I'm working a lot harder on my marketing skills now than I am on my sales skills.
Yeah. And I mean, that's clear. And that is a constant. There's organisations which are structured, marketing heading, reporting up the food line, sales similarly so. And then you do have structures where you have a seat which is, has marketing and sales underneath reporting up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, are you saying therefore that that person should have the head of marketing and sales should have a marketing background or pedigree, or are you suggesting that just you have responsibility for both functions, but your background?
Well, ideally, they're probably an engineer these days, to be straight up. The reality is whoever heads up that team should understand process, should be smart enough to understand psychology, has to put together a tech stack if they're doing something on scale that's truly going to support everybody throughout the process. But the reality is that I think that these days, you really have to come at it from a marketer's perspective and say, right, how can we fill the top of the pipeline in a way that's going to support, so if you look at basically, I put this one, just pull this one up just in case. How do I fill the pipeline up the top to make sure that the way we do that accelerates sale velocity, and what can I do from a nurturing perspective to support that, both in terms of salespeople's conversations and other stuff that's going on? And that could be retargeting while the sales conversation's going on. That could be a better proposal process to make things go faster. That could be a more effective chat room so that people get responded to within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Then how do I make sure that what we're doing is supporting a conversion of more sales at more volume, at more margin? And there are so many things we can do from a traditional marketing perspective to support that. And then not only that, once the customer actually comes on board, how can we create such an amazing experience that it becomes very easy to sell more, to retain more effectively, and to make them into advocates, which helps us fill the pipeline with really highly qualified leads.
And that's kind of where you want to get to as an organisation, right? Like the best clients, most successful clients we have are the ones that have that flywheel of alignment and marketing bringing people in, sales having a great product to offer and delivering on the promises that are made, and happy customers referring other customers, and the kind of ecosystem takes off, right?
But if you think about the disconnects here, right? If sales isn't working with marketing, we might fill the pipeline with the wrong type of people with the wrong type of message.
Yeah.
If sales and marketing aren't working together, we're missing out on all the nurturing, retargeting, social proof strategies that we could be executing online. If a poor job's done in the first part of the pipeline by marketing not really understanding what's going on, then sales are, one, going to blame marketing, but two, going to do a really poor job of those three conversion strategies. And then four, if marketing's not doing a fantastic job once the client's on board and they don't understand the value or don't appreciate the value, and sales isn't working with them to let them deliver the value, then we've got massive problems because we're going to have to keep bringing on more and more new customers because we're not creating retention, we're not creating advocacy. So a disconnect at any level of the four stages of pipeline creates a massive problem. Massive problem.
It's good. And it leads into my into the next kind of theme or bucket I wanted to cover, which is practical tips to building or rebuilding or keeping strong alignment between sales and marketing. I think you kind of just touched on it there for me. I think one is agreed personas. Like we'll often find that we'll speak to marketers who don't really understand from the coalface what are the pain points, what are the benefits, what's keeping the customer up at night, and or potentially marketers who don't understand the benefit or value that the product that they themselves are marketing brings to the customers.
Well, I think it's interesting, right? So personas is a classic disconnect between sales and marketing.
Yep.
So many marketers have taken personas to such a crazy deep level that salespeople can't cope with all the detail. It all gets too confusing and they switch off. And then the marketers are getting upset about the fact that the salespeople aren't buying into it and they're not really inputting. So I think even taking a step back and saying, all right, just some agreement around personas between sales and marketing around which is the most dominant persona at the beginning of the purchasing process and throughout and then towards the end. And if the salesperson can say, oh, wow, I get it. So the reason we've got 5 personas is so that you're marketing heavily on booking meetings with that person because they're normally interested and going to get me through the front door. Then you're retargeting the other 3 stakeholders so they've seen something before I meet with them or talk to them. Plus our proposal document speaks to each 3 of those other stakeholders. Yep. And then basically from a pricing perspective, you've created some fantastic cost benefit case studies that enabled me to sit in front of the CFO and the CEO and have a really powerful story. Oh, now I can understand why you've broken down these personas and why I have different tools around each one. But that's not normally the conversation.
What's the normal conversation?
Well, the normal conversation is WTF are personas, and you're trying to boil the ocean. You've confused the hell out of things. You've outsmarted yourself. I know the first time that we did personas in my organisation, we outsmarted ourselves. It went like that.
And I like we there's a phrase which I think we probably picked up 3 or 4 years back, which is done is better than perfect. And it hasn't just infused the way we develop personas if and when we do it for a client, but it's very much how we try to run a lot of things through the agency. And personas were a thing that were becoming increasingly overbaked, and to the point where they either A, weren't finished, or B, were just never referred to. But definitely a big believer of if we are having, it depends on the client and depending on their setup, but ideally we do try to get input from sales functions into personas, because it's very difficult if the 2 functions are in isolation. You're just not properly hearing it from the coalface, right, as to what are the issues and the objections that should be part of that persona framework.
I think with larger organisations and even medium, small size organisations that have good CRM data, it's amazing how many of them don't look backward and say, well, of the last 50 sales, what was the entry point? Like it's there in the CRM, or you can pull it out from the diary. Like who was the first person we spoke to and what was their role? How many meetings or communications did it take to get through to the other personas? Like where in the sales process did those other personas get involved? I think a lot of organisations outsmart themselves by trying to figure all this out in massive workshops with salespeople who have retention of a goldfish, and I'm one of them, so I'm putting my hand up there, right? And
everything we say about you guys
totally detached from reality. I mean, the one thing about us salespeople, and I'm very proud of this, is, you know, you ask me where a deal got done, and I'll just tell you what I want it to be, not what it was.
But you guys are doing all the hard work over there, aren't you, in sales?
Absolutely.
Where the money comes from, it's...
well, we are generally better at selling ourselves than we are selling others. And so the challenge when you're trying to get qualitative data from a salesperson, they'll tell you what they want to hear and what you want to hear. They won't tell you what's really going on. And that's why in many ways, I'm not a big fan of all these Speak to the CEO programs, because most of the data I see suggests that the first person people spoke to was not the CEO.
Yeah.
And in fact, most sales go through without anybody actually speaking to the CEO. Everything gets signed off somewhere below.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's kind of, that wasn't the kind of, you're doing a good job of just segueing into the next point that I wanted to talk about. This is good, Dean. The next one is metrics, like SQLs, MQLs we've touched on. I think what you just referenced there is don't necessarily rely upon what a sales rep tells you they think he or she might have sourced deals from. Look at data. Like, are you seeing out there organizations that are kind of that are doing a better job of aligning sales and marketing, looking at certain metrics more closely and actually discarding other metrics that probably aren't as relevant to sales and marketing alignment?
I am amazed at how immature effective use of CRM really is when you get underneath the hood across every size of organisation. You know, I think about drinking the Salesforce Kool-Aid, and this is nothing against Salesforce. I'm a huge fan of their product and their solution and what they do and what they're all about. But I remember really drinking the Salesforce Kool-Aid back in 2009. And where we are now is where I thought we'd be in about 2012.
Yeah.
It's just mind-blowing how poorly organisations are implementing CRM and driving adoption. That is still a massive problem. And that kind of does my head in, because it should be pretty obvious to you if you've been in sales over the last 10 years that CRM can generate massive value. They're failing to collect the data because they're making it way too manual. Then they're failing to use the data, so people are devaluing the data. And even when the data's there, they're ignoring the data and just going off on the journey that suits them. So,
and I think that to me is kind of a really interesting point, which is we see the same problem coming from a different perspective, right? CRMs that are legacy, aren't kept up to date, aren't doing the job, are too cumbersome, whatever else. Organizations that actually do have one and they're using it in an okay fashion, often attribution is just not considered. So MQLs are coming through, they're looking at last click, where did it come from? Or they all came from LinkedIn, or they all came from Facebook or Google. Those leads aren't any good. But to the point you've just touched on, most high value sales, it's not one touch Google form. You're buying $100,000 piece of software. It's multiple touches offline, multiple stakeholders in an organization. And so if we don't have a more nuanced approach to, how we're using CRMs, attribution type stuff, then the whole thing's fruitless, right?
But, isn't it interesting? I guess that almost gets to the essence of it. If I was sitting down developing a marketing plan with sales, I'd say, let's work backwards. Let's actually imagine that we've got a client who's a massive advocate and they've told 3 other people that they should buy from us, and we've got meetings from those 3 people. Yeah. What happened just before that? What happened just before that? And what supported conversion more effectively? And then how did we move them through the pipeline, and what other stakeholders had to be motivated on the way through? And then how did we actually get into the pipeline and get in front of them? And then how did we generate awareness before that? And I'd be working backwards and saying, okay, great. So therefore, the metrics that support that journey are the metrics that we should use for success, including conversion. Yeah. But that's not what happens. What happens is someone says, oh, well, my MQL line stops at around about between fill the pipeline and accelerates its velocity. So I'm going to give you a pack of metrics around basically what I got to there. And then everything from there on is your fault. And then if someone comes around 6 months later and says, but we didn't convert any of those, then we'll swap channels or we'll swap messages, which is insane.
I think that's right. And I think the tone you just used then in kind of, acting out the actual reality of lots of organizations, it touches on this kind of blame game type thing, which we know is eternal. Keen to unpack, because I've got my own view on this and happy to share, but the relationship between the two, I think at the end of the day, we're people and we've got kids, or we don't have kids, and we're trying to develop our career and retain our place in an organization. Like the importance of the human relationship between sales teams and marketing teams, advice.
Well, let's break that down, right? What does the science say? The science says there are 4 things that drive a higher level of liking, interdependence, support between 2 human beings, okay, or 2 teams, what it might be. Number 1, similarity. Similarity in goals, similarity in values, similarity in beliefs, similarity in experience, similarity in passions. So just by going your marketing, your sales, we've created difference.
Yep.
Right? So if there's a lack of similarity, don't be surprised if there's not fantastic collaboration. Number 2, exchange. and the quality and the quantity of exchange. So the more interaction two parties have and the better the quality of that interaction and the richer and the deeper the conversations are, the higher the level of liking. Now, if I was to map the average conversation between marketing and sales, it's not high quality or high quantity exchange. So you've got a problem there.
Yep.
3, praise. And like you said, it's normally the opposite. It's actually bad-mouthing each other and devaluing each other rather than praise. So we're now 3 for 3 that we haven't ticked. And then 4th, admiration. The more we admire the other person or the other team or what they do, the more we want to work with them.
Yeah.
We haven't ticked that. So the science says I need those 4 things in place to generate a high level of support, agreement, engagement, work together activity, collaboration, we'll call it whatever you want. Most organisations are not supporting the ticking of one of those boxes, let alone 4 of them.
Hey, I love that. I do feel that because we are talking fundamentally about a typical relationship in organisations, a relationship between a sales department and a marketing department. Departments aren't real, humans are, right? So it is a relationship between 2 people. And I think if we look at it, similarity with your sales and marketing, exchange, hopefully as little as possible, because I'd rather just blame game. The third one.
And even the way you send me the leads, or the way that I take the leads on, the exchange is terrible.
Correct.
There's no feedback. There's no
praise. Well, no, I'm sales. I made all the sales. I made the revenue. This was all me.
Correct. It was me.
Thank you so much to the awesome work, the awesome campaign that went out into market, brought these really good quality leads in. We've now brought them over the line. Let's put more money back into marketing. Doesn't happen. And admiration. Well, I think we both laughed at the same time when you said that. So, and then I think that's right. And the one around exchange to me is maybe the most important of that. I just feel that from my observation, it's just such a cliche. We've been hearing about marketing for the last decade, but you just find that there's actually no real collaboration, no connection, no standing meetings, no casual meetings between the two.
No. Well, when you think about this, right? So, and really part of this, my experience in the last 5 to 10 years has been that people's behaviour inside organisations of more than 20 people are far more a reflection of the relationships than the results they've been given to achieve. So despite the fact that someone's been given a certain set of results to achieve, if the relationships are terrible, their behaviour is going to reflect the relationships more than the results they were meant to achieve. So if you don't get the relationships right internally, you can KPI all you want, you can provide targets, you can provide incentives, you can do all those things. But if the relationships are crap, especially in the Australian culture, then you're always going to have so much friction that your efficiency is going to be terrible.
Really, really interesting. I like that a lot. So Dean, that's most of the kind of the themes, the topics I kind of wanted to cover. I think just any observations from you as to you're a young marketer, say, listening to the pod, or an in-house marketer, like one thing that you could do to help build alignment with your sales manager or your sales team in your organization?
It's really simple. If you are a young marketer, you need to get more excited about conversion and what happens at the end of the funnel than the salespeople are. If you are a young salesperson, you have to get more excited about filling the pipeline than the marketing team is. There's no more room for people who want to play a specialist game, because the simple reality is if you tell me, but Dean, I'm the best closer in the world and I'm a fantastic negotiator, I'm going to be great, but I'm going to say great. But if that's all you do, then your overall value to me is very limited and constrained by the number of ready to close deals I can send through to you. And if you're a great marketer but no one's closing, then you're not going to have the budget, the tech stack and everything else you need to be successful. So if you're young and starting out, if you're my age and starting out, you've got to reprogram yourself to get excited about the other end of the pipeline.
I love it. Dean Mannix, thanks for your time.
Game on, James. Always glad to speak.